what we're going to do we're going to take a short journey, 7 to 8 weeks, up to Easter, going through Holy Week, and we're going to talk about, engage the idea of prayer. And we're calling the sermon series, Conversation with Father. Now, I like this title. I love this title. I didn't come up with this title. Bruce did. But I like it because I think we almost need to deconstruct some of our ideas of prayer. Maybe ask even God, where do we have wrong concepts about prayer? Where am I misunderstanding prayer or not understanding correctly the thing that you call prayer that's really this conversation with you? And then ask him in the same time, would you then take that away from me, the wrong concepts, and replace them with right thinking, with right action, with right motive, with right everything about prayer, about conversation with you? And what I'd like to do is I'd like to challenge you to say that this time of prayer, of conversations about prayer, isn't just to be about prayer. I want Sundays to be, sure, it's a lesson, it's a sermon, it's reprove, rebuke, exhort, all that stuff that it says in Timothy, but outside of that, it has to be a lab. You have to take it outside of Sunday and you have to pray. You have to go on this journey with us in prayer. Maybe you've tried that journey before and given up. I'd like you to retry. I'd like to engage in the idea of doing it again. So let's start by praying. Well, Father, we're not content to learn about you or to talk about you or to hear about you. We want to be with you. God, just as we just sang and worshiped and really just cried out for your presence, God. God, would you bring some of that passion outside of worship service and into our workplace and our family and our times driving in the car and, the time when we sit down with our Bible open and ask specifically to hear from you, to converse with you. In Jesus' name, amen. So some of the stuff, like if this is going to be the class and then the lab work happens all the rest of the week, we want to give you some tools to use during lab time. And on our website, you will find some resources there, books by guys like Timothy Keller and Eugene Peterson, people that we have a lot of respect for and enjoy their work, and it feeds us as pastors. And outside of just the books, we've also put on there a couple links to places like Joshua Project and Operation World. Because if you're going to engage in prayer, I would ask that you would also think about, and we'll unpack these concepts, but intercessory prayer, praying for the nations, praying for something outside of yourself. And those two things in particular, Joshua Project and Operation World, are great ways to get started, invaluable resources if you want to pray for missions, for people that haven't yet heard the gospel. So here's a truism about prayer. It's universal. Everywhere you go all over the world, people pray. Everyone is crying out to something outside of themselves, and it looks very different, and it's not all to the one true God, but everyone prays somehow. There's some really innovative ways to pray that I've seen as I've traveled around the world. I felt maybe sometimes like Paul as he walked in to a place of worship, and he said, I can see that you guys are very religious, because there are idols everywhere. And some of you, maybe even in this congregation, have traveled around the world and maybe even seen places like Tibet, where they get really innovative, and they'll put a prayer on a wheel and spin the wheel, and every time the wheel spins, it's like, well, see, I just had to write that prayer down once, and then every time it spins, it goes up to heaven. Or I write it on a flag, and then there it is. Every time the wind blows by it, it's another prayer to heaven. It's kind of a cut, copy, paste prayer. And we can almost snicker at that, but how many of your prayers are cut, copy, paste? Could you almost do in your sleep? It's just this, it's the same thing I say every time. I'm just saying it again. And we want to engage that idea that if everyone prays, but not everyone prays the same or prays to the same God, then what does that mean? And how do we become a praying people in our worldview of Christianity and to our Lord Jesus? Now, a survey was done in 2004. I find this just fascinating. 2004, a survey was done, and 30% of atheists admitted that they prayed sometimes. Isn't that interesting? I do not believe in God, but every once in a while I talk to him. And I remind him that I still don't believe in him. God, you're not there. Be quiet. Another survey was done even more recently, I believe in 2012, and 17% of agnostics admitted that they prayed regularly. And of course, agnostic is someone who says, I don't know if there's a God, and I don't think you can know. Maybe there's a God, maybe there's not a God. I pray to the God that might be there. And maybe we can admit that that's how we feel sometimes, even when we pray. So, one of the things we're going to do as a lab is we're going to engage in 40 days of prayer as a community. 40 days of prayer. We're going to be rolling it out soon. It'll lead up to and come to fruition on Easter. But we're going to start by opening up campuses and giving a spot and a place for us to come together and pray every day for 40 days. And to some of you, just that idea is like, whoa, 40 days. That's a long time. But you know, as I thought about it, you know what I thought of? When Tricia and I first started dating, we were young and beautiful. See? That's not the picture I told her I was going to use. No reason to focus in. If you focus back out, you'll see that I'm wearing white jeans, white Levi's. Yeah, I rocked those white jeans. We lived a long ways away from one another. We weren't close. And so there was no internet at this time. Imagine, it was Stone Age. There was no internet. The way that we communicated was writing on pieces of parchment, folding them, and then you'd give this guy 10 cents, and he would travel across the country to deliver it for you. It was amazing. The price has gone up since then. But we would communicate through mail. And I would write her a letter, and then she would write me a letter. And then back and forth, back and forth. And I lived at the end of a long gravel road. I would run to the end of that gravel road to open up that mailbox at 15, 16, and to see if there wasn't a letter from Tricia inside. You could take the picture down now. I think we get the idea. Real funny. And when I opened up that mailbox and there was no letter inside, my heart sunk. And because I was 16 and I was full of testosterone, I also got angry and I punched the mailbox. I pummeled it. There's a lot of hormones going on at that time. Some of you guys know, you're there. When there was a letter inside, my heart just sang for joy. And I couldn't wait to go back to my house and go into my room and shut the door and pull out that letter and see if it smelled like anything. And read everything that she had to say and then reread it for the things that she didn't say, but I thought she might be saying that were kind of between the lines. And I would read so much into every little piece of this. Sometimes I would even look like, she dotted that I with a heart. Yeah, she digs me. And I remember in particular the sign-off was so important to me because, right, what do you sign off with? Love. So I would read that word, love, and I'm like, is that just a sign-off or does she love me? And I'll never forget the day it went from love to love ya. So that's not a sign-off, right? If you say love ya, that means more. And then eventually it went to I love you. Bam. Victory. And what was it? It was a conversation. It was a back and forth. She would say something. I would respond to it. She'd ask a question. It was back and forth. It was a love conversation. You know what? I've read so many biographies about great men of God. And one of the things that's impressed me over and over again as I read them was how much they prayed. How much time they would spend in prayer. And sometimes it was quiet and peaceful, but sometimes it wasn't at all. Sometimes it was moanings and groanings and tongues and ecstasy and tears. And I thought, oh my goodness, they love God so much that they just don't stop talking to him. But you know what? I think maybe over my life, I've misunderstood that. Maybe we've got that backwards. Maybe they prayed so much that they loved God. I think sometimes we get the idea that some people just love God more and so they pray more. as opposed to if I prayed more, I think maybe I would love God more, because how else are you going to get to know someone without talking to them? Imagine a scenario. How many people here have ever had to have a roommate, right? You've had a roommate at some point in your life. Or maybe you've got a roommate horror story. Like, yeah, I lived with this guy. He was like a comic collector, and he smelled like tuna all the time. And for the life of me, I don't know why. We never bought tuna. He smelled like tuna. I don't know where. Or just living with someone can be awkward and weird. Now, what if you lived with someone and they never talked to you? You passed by him in the hall, not a word, not a nod, not a nothing. You saw him in the kitchen, you prepared separate meals, no conversation. And then you pressed him one day and you're like, look, we've been living together for months now and you don't talk to me. You never say anything. And their response was, look, I just don't get much out of talking to you. Or even when I try to talk to you, you start to talk and I just kind of unfocus and blur. It's just it's boring. Or frankly, who's got the time to talk to you? I'm a busy man. And we would say what would we say? That's rude, right? Who would do that? That is terribly rude. Now, what if that person that you're living with is all-knowing? What if they're all-powerful? What if they're all present? They're everywhere. And they're completely good. Not talking to them becomes not just rude, it's like criminal. How could you not engage that person in decisions? How could you not engage that person with every aspect of your life and lean on them and go to them for everything? So, listen to this quote by Eugene Peterson. I think this gives just a great beginning introduction to prayer as we start to unpack this thing and maybe pull out stuff that we don't understand and try to put in stuff that we do. Eugene Peterson says this, says, prayer is language used in personal relation to God. It's pretty simple, right? So maybe you grew up with a prayer that didn't sound personal and didn't sound relational. Maybe it sounded very rote and it was just, well, we all stand and we all say this right now, and so. But let's engage this idea. Prayer is language used in personal relation to God. It gives utterance to what we sense or want or respond to before God. God speaks to us. Our answers are our prayers. The answers are not always articulate. Sometimes they're silence, sighs, groanings. They're not always pretty. Sometimes it's questions, anger, or frustration. But God is always involved, whether it's light or darkness, faith or doubt, in joy or sadness. We're not alone in this conversation. There is someone really on the other end of this thing. So our habit, though, is more to talk about God than to actually talk to God. We're much more comfortable talking about Him than we are talking to Him. So the Bible is just rife with examples of prayer. We could start almost anywhere, but we're going to just, as I open up the first point and then turn over to Bruce, we're going to look in Ephesians, because in Ephesians what we find is Paul talking to his church there. This has already gone on 3 missionary journeys. The church has been established. It's just starting to grow, but it's still a fledgling church. It's still young. And he's praying for them. And he even talks about his prayers for them. So let's see what Paul says when he talks to the church in Ephesus about his prayer. He says, "For this reason, ever since I heard about your faith in the Lord Jesus and your love for all God's people, I have not stopped giving thanks for you, remembering you in my prayers. I keep asking that the God of our Lord Jesus Christ, the glorious Father, may give you the spirit of wisdom and revelation." That's what he's asking for them. I pray that God will give you wisdom and revelation, so that you may know him better. That's the end, right? I pray for this so that you can have this, that you can know him better. I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, in order that you may know the hope to which he has called you, the riches of his glorious inheritance in his holy people, and his incomparable great power for us who believe. Now to really get context here, you gotta understand what's happening in Ephesus at this time. Even when Paul came through here himself, he met some persecution, he met some resistance to the gospel, because Ephesus was a town of major witchcraft. I mean, it was a real thing. It was an industry there. And not just witchcraft, but idol worship of all kinds. And so this idea of a church that believed in the one true God and actually preached against this thing that was the industry of the city was a very dangerous thing, and they were starting to meet with persecution themselves. But what does he not ask for? He does not ask for the outward circumstances to be changed. He doesn't. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there isn't a time to pray that outward circumstances change. There sure is. There's a time to pray that the sickness goes away. Right? There's a time to pray that the persecution stops. But there's something happening here that maybe I think we don't tap into very much at all. What he's doing is he's reaching inside of them and he's saying, I'm praying for that part of you inside that can't be seen, that's going to give you the strength to endure the things that you're going through. Not that the things themselves would change. That you would know God more. He does it again in Ephesians chapter 3. Just a couple chapters later, he says this. For this reason, I kneel before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of his glorious riches he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power, together with all the Lord's holy people, to grasp how wide, how long, how high, how deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God. See what he's doing here? Here he's praying for the inner man. You can go to CrossFit right now and they'll tell you, your core, you got to work on your core, right? Your core is important. But he's reaching past muscle and sinew and tissue, and he's speaking to something else, some other core. When I was in high school, Paul Simon came out with a song, and the first line of the song was, why am I so soft in the middle? The rest of my life is so hard. Remember that song? And I remember as a high schooler thinking, ha ha ha, I'll never get soft in the middle. But he was at the age I'm at now, and I'm thinking, yeah, we get soft, but is this a place we can afford to be soft in? In this inner man, in the place that God says, shouldn't we, with age, maybe even as our body weakens, shouldn't our core get stronger, the core of our spirit get stronger as we go? And how do we engage that muscle? What's the crunch of that core? It's a conversation with our Father. And if we're not engaging the one who is, as we already said, omniscient, omnipresent, all powerful, all these things, then where are we getting our information from? This is the information age. If we're not getting it from the one who's always right, where is it coming from?
It's interesting that, like Jason was saying, that Paul wrote those words, and he didn't ask for a new emperor. He didn't ask for, new government. He didn't ask for release from prison. He prayed that they would intimately know God and that the eyes of their heart would be enlightened. I think that's really critical for us because we live in a culture that is obsessed with circumstances, that is obsessed with control, that is obsessed with everything looking good on the outside. And you can call that whatever you want, but I think you know it to be true. We also live, ironically, in a culture that is obsessed with communication. Isn't that funny? So a few weeks ago, my wife and I were picking up some sound equipment out in southwest Portland somewhere, and we were somewhere out by Sherwood. I had never been out that direction. It was out towards 99, and we were headed back towards the city, and we said, hey, let's go get some Thai food. Oh, that's a great idea. I love Thai food. So what did I do? I whip out my phone, and I hit an app called Around Me. Anybody use that app? And you just type in Thai food, and all of a sudden, these red pins come up everywhere. Ding, 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 and it shows you 5 Thai restaurants within 10 miles of your location. Sweet, there's 5. Let's pick this one. Oh no, let me go to TripAdvisor and see which one has the most stars. So I go to TripAdvisor. That's the best one. Okay, now the map, and then the map will walk me through. An idiot could find this. Talk to me. Turn left, and there, right? And then the last thing I do is I pull up another app called Waze, W-A-Z-E, that tells me the least amount of traffic on the roads that I'd want to take. Don't take this route, take this route. Isn't that amazing? Now, I'm not here to pick on cell phones, but here's some stats, all right? In a recent survey by Barna, George Barna, 30% of U.S. adults surveyed reported feeling that extra information gives them a sense of greater control over the decisions they make. About 40% actually say, I make better decisions because of my friend, the internet. Now, they also say this, that 70% say they feel overwhelmed at times with the amount of information that's out there. 50% say they don't trust 50% of the information that's out there. Doesn't that seem a little schizophrenic to you? The average millennial will check their cell phone 45 to 50 times a day. Now you may be going, are you kidding? I got 80, 90 going right now on Monday. It's not even 5 o'clock yet. I think it's ironic that the amount of communication and information that's out there is always going up. Muslims pray 5 times a day without fail, a good Muslim. The Buddhists that he was describing pray all day long. Hindus are in a state of prayer. As a believer, who the core doctrine of our religion is a personal relationship with Jesus, I wonder how many times I check in a day. I'm not here to bash cell phones. Who cares about that? But I'm just saying that if you think about it, I'm checking in with some internet god out there somewhere. 50% of what he tells me is baloney. 50 times a day? And I can't last a minute in the presence of God? Well, that's what we'd like to address in this series. I'm not here to make you feel guilty, but I'm here to challenge you. So I want to just look in the gospel for just a second. Jesus is on the scene in the early chapters of the Gospel of Mark. And he's been healing and driving out demons. If you read the Gospel of Mark, we did a series here a few years ago. It's a gospel of action. Jesus hits the ground running. Demons in church and healings and all this stuff. And so it says very early in the morning in Mark chapter 1, while it was still dark, Jesus got up and he left the house and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Interesting. Dark, early, solitary, and he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, Jesus, everybody is looking for you. This is like the shark at the halftime show, right? Everybody is excited to see you. Your life is on fire right now. Jesus, do you realize your ratings are off the charts? I'm paraphrasing, of course. Jesus says, and so Jesus' reply is just amazing. I mean, wouldn't it, if you were self-promoting, if you were trying to build your ministry or your brand, wouldn't that be the greatest news in the world? Everybody waiting to see you. And he goes, let's go somewhere else. What? What do you mean, let's go somewhere else? He said, I'm going to preach there. That's why I've come. Huh? It's just like totally. And then Luke records these words. News about him spread all over. The crowds of people came to hear him and be healed of their diseases and their sicknesses. I mean, what pastor wouldn't love to be able to say that about themselves? Man, people are coming from Woodburn to hear me. Where the heck is Woodburn? You know, it's right. So they're coming from all over, man. I'm telling you, in our church, and I've been around this my whole life. Our church is on fire, this and that. And where's Jesus? Where's the pastor? Well, he's in lonely places praying. What's up with this? What is up with this? There's one more place that the gospel writer records Jesus praying among a few others, but I picked these 3. And it's in Mark chapter 14, now the last days of his life. In fact, he's about to face the worst circumstance he's ever faced, which is betrayal and death. And where do we find him? They go to a place called Gethsemane, and Jesus says to his disciples, you sit here, I'm going to go pray. He took Peter, James, and John with him, and he began to be deeply stressed and troubled. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow. I love that the gospel writer would put these words in here. My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow. They had no clue what he was talking about, but he knew perfectly well what was about to happen. Have you ever had a season in your life that's been overwhelming with sorrow and disappointment? And he prays, he goes, you stay here. He goes a little farther and he falls to the ground and prays. I love the word here in the Greek, it's Abba. The word Abba is a diminutive of father. Your little girl, when she's sick and has a fever, will climb into your lap and she will say, Daddy, Daddy. This is the word that Jesus is using. Daddy, if it's possible, I'd like this to pass. I don't want to drink this cup. Man, you know, in Jesus' greatest hour of need, we don't find him freaking out in the office of a therapist, blaming governments, cursing Romans, upbraiding his ridiculous sleeping disciples. You know what you find him doing? You find him talking to Daddy. I was reflecting on this as we were putting this together this week, and I thought to myself, you know, some of us are without fathers, and it was no fault of our own. Some of us are without fathers, and it's our fault. Some of us, we had nothing to do with it. Dad was just not there, and that's not your fault. But some of us, we have to own it. But I don't want to hear what you have to say. That's crippled me and you. Jesus had this incredibly intimate relationship with Daddy that in the worst moment of his life, it was the first place he went. You know, there's a ditch on both sides of the road here. On one side of the road, you have this ditch where everything is going well. My circumstances are great. The bills are paid. She loves me. Everything's going fine. And you know what the ditch is there is? No need to pray here. Everything's fine. And so we move into a place of self-sufficiency. The ditch on the other side of the road is everything's going to just down the tubes. And when we pray, nothing seems to happen. Nothing seems to change. And so now we're angry and bitter. What's the sense? You're the only one not doing his job around here, like the clip, right? And now we've got this stubborn withdrawal. I'm not even going to talk to you. I'm mad at you. And both of those are missing what Paul prayed for us, that the eyes of my heart would be enlightened, that I would have this deep stability in my soul. This is what he's praying for, that the eyes of my heart would be like, that you would know the depth of the love of God. He's talking about stability here. Stability is more than I think it's more than we imagine. There was a tragedy that happened, and it happened in Korea last year, where a captain of a ship, a captain of a ferry, was taking a group of people, around 400 and some to be exact, 476 people on board. And as he was launching out, that ship took a turn in the current, and just inexplicably, the ship began to list, and they tried to overcorrect, and then the ship began to tip. And as that ship tipped, the side compartments were open, they filled with water, and it just went from bad to worse, and all of a sudden, this thing started to roll. On that ship were close to 300 high schoolers on an outing. 307 people lost their lives that day. It was a tragic accident. They lost 2 divers, rescue people, trying to get it back, trying to get the people rescued that were trapped underneath. When they did an investigation, here's what they found. In fact, the captain of that ship and his crew, 3 of his crew, were convicted of criminal homicide, negligent homicide, because what they had done is they had taken the ship, that blue part of that bow there that is normally in the deepest part of the water, is filled with a thing called ballast. Ballast is just weight. It's dead weight. It's water. It's some kind of component that you put in the bottom of a ship. What's it there for? A ship is designed to only carry a certain amount of tonnage. That captain saw an opportunity for more. If I get rid of some of the ballast weight, I can put more cars and more people and make more money. And by shortcutting that, when that ship took what should have been just an average turn, it began to tip over. Because what was underneath the water that was supposed to keep it stable was gone. And what should have been a normal turn for anybody else became a disaster. Think about that with me, would you, this morning? The ballast is the place that no one sees. What's above ground is my ministry. What's above ground is my marriage. What's above ground is my business. And you know what all those things say? More. I need more people. I need more business deals. I need more stuff. Honey, we need more of your time. We're going to have more children. That's going to cost more money. You're going to have to work more hours. Listen, the above ground part of my life and your life is never going to change. And to think it's going to change is I'm sorry, but we're living in Gaga land. The ancient Christian mystics would try to reject this and try to move away and just go to the mountains and I'm never going to come down. But those people were not married with families. Our culture says more. You need to work more. You need to be better more. There's going to be more temptation. I want to tell you that in the next 10 or 15 years, the culture in our country could change drastically. What's below the water is what Jesus had when he landed in the Garden of Gethsemane and said, "Whoa, Dad, this is bigger than me. And if it's possible, I pray that it would pass. But not my will, but your will be done." Jesus wants to take you and I through the process of prayer to a place that we need to go. And we need to get over the issues we have with Dad and stop arguing and stop our stubborn rebellion and say, "God, you know what? If you don't take me deeper, then I'm not sure I'm gonna survive the next wave." Some of you in here, some of us in here, you've come through last year was just like, whoa, one storm after another, and you're here because you've held on to God. I want to commend you for that. You've got to taste, the psalmist said, taste and see that the Lord is good. So as we finish this morning, we're going to just lay this down with you here and just say, hey, over the next few weeks, we want to challenge you to pray. We want to describe what it is compared to what I think it is, and we want to actually pray and see what God would do. Jason said something out south. He said, you know, I can make you a guarantee that if all you do is listen, but don't apply, nothing will change. I would also make the guarantee that if you listen and apply, I guarantee your life will change. But I think it really starts with this below the water. What is my relationship? You know, my reputation is what I hope you think I am. I hope you think I'm just a wonderful spiritual guy. But integrity is who I really am below the waterline. Being a pastor is scary because sometimes you feel like, well, we're paying you to pray. Yeah, I better pray. I'm the pastor. Oh my gosh. But it's all of us, man. I don't know. My ship is not yours. But I'll tell you, the water line and the waves and the current, that's all of us. We're swimming in the same sea. Eugene Peterson in The Message puts it this way. When you come before God, don't turn it into a theatrical production. All those people making a regular show out of their prayers, hoping for stardom. You think God sits in a box seat? Here's what I want you to do. Find a quiet, secluded place so you won't be tempted to role play before God. Just be there as simply and honestly as you can manage. Just be there. Just be there. I was watching that video of Hannah Pruitt. I don't know if you're here, and it was interesting what she said in the testimony. She said, I felt like I felt God again. Listen, honey, I've been in this for 30 years and I still struggle with that. In fact, I think I felt God more when I was your age than I do now after doing it for 30 years. We never outgrow the need for the ballast below the water. And Eugene's saying, or Jesus is saying here, he's saying, look, you can't fake this. He says, if you'll just be there. That seems like such a waste of time, God. My phone is lighting up. Just be there. And the focus will shift from you to God, and you begin to sense His grace. The world is full of so-called prayer warriors who are prayer ignorant. They're full of formulas, programs, advice, peddling techniques for getting what you want from God. You hear what he's saying? He said, they're just techniques for getting what I want from God. That's not what God is after. He's after you. I just want you to be with me. This is your Father you're dealing with, and He knows better than you what you need. With a God like this loving you, you can pray very simply. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Come on, your kingdom come. Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Lord, give us today our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Father, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Father, as we finish this morning, I just pray you'd get us in a place where your grace could cover us to sit still. We'd stop fighting, we'd stop struggling, we'd stop jiving, and we could just hear your voice. Before we transition into another song, Tommy just plays there. I want you just to take about 60 seconds and what would Father say to you right now? I've said enough. Pastor Jason, we've said enough. What would Father say to you right now? Listen, I pray you'd hear His heart this morning for you.